The unexpected encounter, the scientific vessel Quantum Dawn drifted silently through the void, its crystalline hull catching starlight like a jewel against the darkness. Commander Zithkar stood at the center of the bridge, his tall, slender frame swaying gently as he studied the holographic displays floating around him. The Keth Mori had been exploring this sector for 3 standard cycles, cataloging star systems and searching for signs of intelligent life. Their species had always been driven by curiosity rather than conquest, preferring to observe and learn rather than interfere. Zithkar's large, multifaceted eyes reflected the soft blue glow of the ship's bioluminescent controls. His skin, a pale silver that shimmered with each movement, wore the intricate tattoos that marked him as a senior explorer of the Kethmori Scientific Collective. For over 200 years, he had led expeditions into unknown space, always hoping to discover something that would expand their understanding of the universe. "Commander," called out Navigator Thalis from her station near the quantum sensors, "we're detecting an artificial construct approximately 4 light minutes ahead. The configuration is unlike anything in our databases." Zithkar's head tilted, with interest, his neck extending slightly as it did when he was particularly focused. "Show me." A main display shimmered and revealed a massive vessel hanging in space. Even at this distance, it was clearly artificial and imposing. The ship appeared to be constructed of dark metal with angular surfaces that seemed designed more for function than beauty. Strange protrusions jutted from its hull at regular intervals, and its overall design spoke of purpose rather than elegance. "Remarkable," whispered cultural analysis expert Valthus, moving closer to examine the image. Her smaller frame and lighter coloring marked her as a member of the scholarly caste dedicated to studying other civilizations. "The design philosophy is completely different from anything we've encountered. Look at those surface modifications." Zithkar nodded slowly. "It appears to be a warship." The bridge fell silent. The Kethmori had encountered only 3 other spacefaring species in their 1,000-year history of exploration, and all had been peaceful. The concept of building vessels specifically for warfare was almost incomprehensible to them. "Commander," said sensor specialist Kylanon, his voice tight with concentration, "I'm detecting approximately 800 life forms aboard that vessel. They appear to be organic, carbon-based, similar to us in basic structure, but with significant differences in physiology. Any signs of aggression?" Zithkar asked. "None that I can detect. They're maintaining a steady course and speed. No weapons are powered, no targeting systems active. They seem to be waiting." Aboard the USS Prometheus, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge with her arms crossed, studying the alien vessel on the main screen. At 42, she was younger than many ship commanders, but her dark eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had earned her position through skill and determination. Her black hair was pulled back in a regulation style, and her uniform bore the subtle scars of someone who had seen action. "Report, Dr. Chun," she said to the woman at the science station, Dr. Sarah Chun. The ship's chief science officer looked up from her instruments. Her Asian features were drawn with concentration as she processed the incoming data. "Captain, they've been scanning us for the past 20 minutes. The technology is incredibly advanced. I've never seen sensor arrays like these." "Hostile intent?" asked Commander Marcus Webb, the ship's executive officer. His weathered face showed the caution of a career military officer. "I don't believe so," Dr. Chun replied. "These scans are clearly scientific in nature. They're not looking for weaknesses or tactical information. They seem to be trying to understand us." Captain Rodriguez walked closer to the view screen, studying the elegant alien vessel. It was beautiful in a way that human ships rarely were. All flowing curves and crystalline surfaces. "Any attempts at communication?" "None yet, Captain." but I think they're being deliberately cautious. Their scanning pattern suggests they're trying to learn our language and communication methods before making contact. Fascinating, Rodriguez murmured. She had been in command of the Prometheus for 3 years, patrolling the outer colonies and protecting human settlements from pirates and raiders. First contact with an alien species had always been a possibility, but she had never expected it to happen during a routine patrol. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "I'm detecting some kind of data probe approaching our outer hull. It's not penetrating our shields, but it's definitely analyzing our ship's structure." Rodriguez made a decision. "Stand down weapons. Maintain shields, but keep them at minimum power. Dr. Chun, can you set up a basic mathematical communication sequence?" "Already working on it, Captain." Back on the Quantum Dawn, the scanning results were beginning to paint a disturbing picture. Veilthus stood before a holographic display showing the internal structure of the human ship, her silver skin pale with shock. "Commander," she said quietly, "this vessel is heavily armed. The weapon systems are integrated throughout the ships. Structure. These beings have designed their vessel specifically for combat." Zithkar moved to examine the data himself. Perhaps they faced natural threats in their region of space. Asteroid fields, solar flares, dangerous cosmic phenomena? "Sir, I don't think so. Look at these weapon configurations. These aren't designed for clearing debris or dealing with natural hazards. These are weapons designed to fight other ships, other intelligent beings." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. The concept of species fighting each other was almost unthinkable to the Kathmori. Their own history contained no wars, no conflicts beyond academic debates and resource allocation discussions. "Continue scanning," Zithkar ordered. "I want to understand these beings before we make any decisions about contact." The deep scans penetrated further into the human ship's computer systems, accessing historical databases and cultural records. What they found there would challenge everything the Kathmori believed about intelligence and civilization. Sensor specialist Kai Lenun's voice was shaking as he read the first translated files. "Commander, I'm accessing their historical records. These beings ... I call themselves humans. And sir, their history is filled with something called war." War! Zithkar had heard the concept in theoretical discussions, but no known species had ever actually engaged in such behavior. Organized conflict between groups of their own species. They have detailed records going back thousands of their years. Battles, invasions, conquests. They've been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. Veilthus looked up from her analysis station, her large eyes wide with disbelief. "Commander, it's worse than that. They don't just fight occasionally. They've never stopped fighting. Even now, according to these records, there are conflicts happening somewhere on their homeworld." The display showed images from human historical archives. Soldiers in various uniforms from different time periods, weapons ranging from simple metal blades to advanced energy weapons, battle scenes that the Kathmori could barely comprehend. "How is this possible?" asked Navigator Thiles. "How can a species survive constant warfare?" "That's what I'm trying to understand," Veilthus replied, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and fascination. "According to these records, they fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. Wars that lasted for years, sometimes decades. And yet, they not only survived, but became stronger." The scans revealed more disturbing information. The humans had developed weapons of incredible destructive power, created military organizations that spanned entire continents, and built their entire civilization around the assumption that conflict was inevitable. "Commander," Kailana reported, "I'm finding references to something called nuclear weapons. The translation is uncertain, but it appears to be a weapon that can destroy entire cities." "Impossible," breathed Zithkar. No species would create such a thing. Sir, according to these files, they've created thousands of these weapons. They've used them against each other, and they still maintain stockpiles that could destroy their entire planet. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They were looking at a species that had created the means of their own extinction and continued to exist anyway. Asterisk. Dr. Chun's voice came through the Quantum Dawn's communication system as the humans finally established contact. Unknown vessel, this is the United Earthship Prometheus. We're receiving your scanning signals and interpret them as peaceful scientific. Inquiry. We wish to establish communication. The voice was clear and steady, showing no signs of fear or aggression despite the fact that they were clearly outnumbered and outgunned by the alien vessel's superior technology. They're not afraid, observed Velthus. Look at their bio readings. Elevated stress levels, but they're maintaining discipline and making rational decisions. Perhaps they're simply unaware of our capabilities, suggested Thalis. No, Zithkar said slowly. They know exactly what we could do to them, but they're choosing to communicate anyway. These beings have faced the unknown before and survived. The scanning continued, revealing more about human nature with each passing moment. The Kethmori discovered that humans had not only survived countless wars, but had learned to organize themselves into efficient military units, develop advanced tactics, and create technologies specifically designed for survival in hostile environments. Commander, Velthus said with growing amazement, they don't just fight each other, they fight their own planet. Natural disasters, disease, predatory animals, environmental hazards. Their entire evolution has been shaped by conflict and survival. Show me, Zithkar ordered. The display showed images of humans in various environments, rescuing people from burning buildings, fighting forest fires, surviving in frozen wastelands, exploring dangerous underwater depths, even venturing into space itself, despite the obvious risks. They're not just warriors, Velthus observed. They're survivors. Everything they do is about overcoming obstacles, facing challenges, pushing beyond their limitations. And they do it together, added Kylanon. Look at these social structures. When faced with external threats, they unite, they cooperate, they sacrifice for each other. The scans revealed stories of human heroism that the Kethmori could barely comprehend. Humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. Soldiers throwing themselves on explosive devices to protect their comrades. Entire populations working together to survive natural disasters that would have destroyed other species. Commander, Velthus said quietly, I don't think these beings are evil. There's something else entirely. They've been forged by conflict into something that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about evolution and civilization. Zithkar stared at the human ship on his screen, beginning to understand that they had encountered something unprecedented. These humans were not just another peaceful species exploring the galaxy. They were something far more complex and potentially dangerous. Continue the scans, he ordered. I need to understand what we're dealing with before we make any decisions about contact. The deep analysis was just beginning, and what they would discover about humanity would challenge everything the Kethmori believed about intelligence, civilization, and survival in the universe. The terrifying truth. The deep scans continued for hours, penetrating further into the human ship's vast databases. Each new discovery sent waves of shock through the Kethmori crew. What they were learning about humanity challenged every assumption they had about intelligent life in the universe. Cultural analysis expert Velthus stood before a massive holographic display showing the evolutionary history of the human species. Her normally pale silver skin had taken on an almost translucent quality as stress hormones flooded her system. Commander Zithkar, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. These beings evolved on a death world. Explain, Zithkar commanded, moving closer to examine the data. Their planet, Earth, is unlike any world that has produced intelligent life in our records. It's a planet of extremes. Massive predators, devastating natural disasters, climate changes that would extinction-level events for most species. And yet, these humans not only survived, but thrived. The display showed images from Earth's history. Massive creatures with razor-sharp teeth and claws, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, ice ages that covered entire continents, asteroid impacts that should have ended all life. Look at their evolutionary adaptations, Balthus continued. They developed persistence hunting, the ability to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They learned to use tools not just for building, but for killing. They developed complex social structures specifically for warfare and defense. Sensor specialist Kylanon looked up from his station, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the horror of what he was discovering. Commander, I'm finding records of their ancient history. They fought with sharpened metal while riding massive beasts. They built siege engines to tear down the walls of their enemies' cities. They developed martial arts that turned their own bodies into weapons. Martial arts? Asked Navigator Thalis. Fighting systems practiced for thousands of years. They study how to inflict maximum damage with minimum effort. And Commander, they teach these to their children as a form of education and self-improvement. Zithkar felt a chill run through his elongated frame. Show me their modern military capabilities. The display shifted to show the current state of human warfare. What they saw defied all logic. Humans had developed weapons that could strike targets on the other side of their planet. They had created vehicles that could travel underwater, across land, and through the air, all designed for combat. They had built orbital platforms, developed energy weapons, and created armor that could withstand incredible punishment. Their military technology is integrated into every aspect of their society, Balthus reported. They have something called a military-industrial complex. Entire sectors of their economy are dedicated to creating better ways to fight and defend. But Commander, Kylanon added, that's not the most disturbing part. Look at this. The display showed human military training facilities. Humans of various ages pushed their bodies to incredible limits, learning to fight in every conceivable environment. They practiced combat in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, underwater, even in the vacuum of space. They trained constantly, Kylanon continued. Not just professional soldiers, but civilians. They have schools where children learn about warfare as part of their basic education. They have competitions where people test their fighting skills against each other. And they volunteer for it, Balthus added in amazement. These beings actually compete for the right to serve in their military forces. They consider it an honor to risk their lives for their species. The scanning revealed something even more remarkable. The humans had developed the concept of sacrifice for others, not just in warfare, but in every aspect of their society. They had firefighters who ran into burning buildings, medical personnel who worked in dangerous conditions, rescue workers who risked their lives to save strangers. Commander, Balthus said slowly, I'm beginning to understand something about these beings. They're not just warriors. They're protectors. Everything about their military capability seems designed not just to destroy, but to defend. Explain. Zithkar ordered. Look at their space program. This ship we're scanning, the Prometheus. It's not just a warship. According to these records, it's part of a fleet that protects their colonies from pirates and raiders. They've built this incredible military capability specifically to protect their own people. The display showed records of human military actions. Unlike the conquest-based warfare of their history, their space-based military seemed focused on protection, rescue, and maintaining peace. They had fought to defend helpless colonies, rescued civilians from disasters, and even helped other species when they encountered them. But Commander, Kailanan said, his voice filled with both fear and admiration, look at what they're capable of when they're threatened. The display showed records of human military responses to genuine threats. When their colonies were attacked, the response was swift and devastating. When their people were threatened, they mobilized resources that dwarfed anything the Kethmori had imagined possible. They don't just fight, Valthis observed. They fight smart. They develop tactics, strategies, technologies. They learn from every conflict and become better at it. And they never give up, added Kailanan. Look at these records of their space battles. Even when outnumbered, outgunned, facing impossible odds, they keep fighting. They adapt, they improvise. They find ways to win that shouldn't be possible. The scans revealed something that made the Kethmori crew fall silent. The humans had developed the concept of acceptable losses. They were willing to sacrifice themselves, their ships, even their cities, if it meant protecting something they valued more. Commander, Valthis said quietly, I found records of something called the Battle of Titan Station. A human colony was under attack by raiders. One human ship, heavily damaged, flew directly into the enemy flagship. They destroyed both ships, but saved the colony. Suicide attack? Sithkar asked. No, sir. Sacrifice. The crew knew they were going to die, but they chose to ensure their death would save others. And according to these records, this kind of sacrifice is considered noble and honorable in their culture. The implications were staggering. They were looking at a species that had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of impossible odds. A species that had turned warfare into an art form, but had also developed the moral framework to use that power responsibly. Commander, Kailanan reported, I'm finding records of their first contact protocols. They've actually prepared for meeting other species. They have procedures for peaceful contact, but also contingency plans for hostile encounters. Show me their hostile encounter protocols, Sithkar ordered. What they saw made the entire bridge. Crew take a step back. The humans had developed detailed plans for fighting enemies they had never encountered. They had weapons designed to work against unknown technologies, tactics that assumed their enemies would be more advanced than they were, and strategies that could be adapted to any situation. They assume every new species they meet might be hostile, Valthis observed. But look at this. They always try diplomacy first. They have extensive first contact protocols designed to establish peaceful relations. But if diplomacy fails? Sithkar asked. Then they're prepared to fight a war against beings they know nothing about, Kailanan replied. And based on their history, they would probably win. The scanning revealed the true scope of human military capability. They had built their entire civilization around the assumption that they would face threats, challenges, and obstacles that would require everything they had to overcome. And they had prepared accordingly. Commander, Valthis said, her voice filled with awe, these beings have created something that shouldn't exist. They've built a military capable of fighting anyone, anywhere, under any conditions. But they've also developed the wisdom to use that power responsibly. Look at their current conflicts, Kailanan added. Pirates, raiders, hostile alien species. They're not conquering anyone. They're protecting their own people and helping others who can't defend themselves. Sithkar stared at the human ship on his main screen, finally beginning to understand what they had discovered. These humans were not just another species. They were something unprecedented in the galaxy. A species that had evolved to be perfect. Warriors, but had chosen to be protectors instead. Commander, came a voice from the communication station. The humans are requesting a response to their communication attempt. Sithkar looked around at his crew. They had been scanning the human ship for hours, learning everything they could about these remarkable beings. Now they had to decide what to do with that knowledge. They know we've been scanning them, he said slowly. They've allowed it. They could have powered their weapons, raised their shields, or simply left. But they chose to wait and see what we wanted. That shows incredible confidence, Valthus observed, or incredible stupidity. No, Zithkar said firmly. It shows exactly what we've been discovering about them. They're not afraid because they don't need to be. They're prepared for anything we might do, but they're hoping we'll choose peace. The bridge fell silent as they contemplated the implications. They had discovered a species that could probably destroy their entire civilization if they chose to. But everything they had learned suggested that humans would only fight if they had no other choice. Commander, Kylanon said quietly, what do we do now? Zithkar looked at the human ship one more time, then at his crew. They had come out here looking for new knowledge, new understanding of the universe. What they had found was something that would change everything. We respond, he said finally. We establish communication. We try to understand these beings not just as warriors, but as people. Because if we can learn to coexist with them, they might teach us something valuable about survival in a dangerous universe. And if we can't? Phyllis asked. Zithkar didn't answer immediately. He had seen enough of human history to know what would happen if they chose to be enemies instead of friends. The humans would fight with everything they had, and they would never give up. They would adapt, they would learn, and they would find ways to win that no one could predict. Then we better hope we never have to find out, he said finally. As the Kethmori prepared to make first contact with humanity, they carried with them the knowledge that they were about to meet a species unlike any other in the galaxy. A species that had been forged by conflict, shaped by adversity, and tempered by sacrifice. A species that had learned to turn their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. The age of human expansion into the galaxy was about to begin, and the universe would never be the same. Asterisk